You don't get to decide who deserves respect.
People like you shouldn't be around customers like them. The remarks rang out like gunfire in the dining room of Lunaire, one of Chicago's most elite restaurants. The jazz trio kept performing, either because they didn't know they should stop or because they were scared to. But all the guests turned to see who the manager was talking to. There she was. A young black woman who worked as a waiter stood still, with her shoulders squared and her jaw set. Amara was her name tag. She wore a nice uniform, and her hair was pushed back properly. Her eyes were riveted on the man who had just humiliated her. A small black girl approximately 7 years old stood right behind her, grasping closely onto a fork she had dropped in astonishment. There were tears in her huge brown eyes. The manager's face was tight, red, and smug. He stated again, this time louder, "This is not the kind of place where your kind gets personal with guests." Amara didn't move. She got in front of the kid. She spoke in a voice that was as clear as glass and said, "Maybe I'm not the type of person you usually meet, but I'm exactly the kind of person this little girl needs to witness standing up for her." That moment changed everything. The man seated at the table across from his daughter was Cameron Beckett, the wealthy CEO of Empire Tech, and one of the most influential black businessmen in the country. And what did he do? It wasn't really loud. It wasn't violent. But that will always be in my mind. And it would shake things up from that white tablecloth dining room to the boardrooms on Wall Street. This is not just a narrative about a restaurant. It's about unfairness, bravery, and what happens when someone finally says, "That's enough." This is a black narrative that needs to be told. Welcome to Hidden Worth, where we tell actual stories of strength and character that don't get enough attention. Stay here. What happened next, outdoors in the parking lot on a rainy Chicago afternoon, is something you won't believe. Before that spectacular fight in the restaurant, and before the cameras gained wind of her story, Amara Sullivan was just another name on Lunaire's roster. Amara was 24 years old and grew up on the south side of Chicago. She learned how to deal with anger, with grace at a young age. "Your smile is your sword, baby," her mother often said. "Use it when the world pulls a knife," she said. Every change. She was the brightness on a rainy day for people who came in often. That waitress who knew your typical order, sensed when you were having a rough day, and was always willing to give you a kind word or a refill without you having to ask. What about her laugh? Soft but spreadable. What about her? Like the pleasant hum of a diner on a Sunday morning, it makes you feel good. Amara didn't only serve meals, she made people feel important. But beneath that bright smile was a lady who was carrying more weight than most people her age. Working 2 jobs to assist her little brother go through college, studying business management at night, paying off her father's hospital bill a little at a time. She never said anything, never made excuses. Every day, like clockwork, they just kept coming. Always clean, always on the job. Her hair was natural and she wore it in a bun that let her prominent cheekbones stand out. Her uniform was usually clean, and even though her sneakers were old, she made them look fantastic. The funny thing is, she was the most praised waitress at Lunaire, but she was also the most micromanaged. Ronald, her boss, kept a close eye on her, always making fun of her tone, posture, and even how she walked. He would never say it directly, but his actions screamed what his words were too afraid to utter. Amara kept her head high, though, because she thought decency was important. Not for praise, but because it showed who you were when you did a good job. She saw a strong person in the mirror every morning, a role model for her tiny brother, someone her father would be proud of. No one, not even Ronald, was going to take that away from her. Not till that day. That day she met the billionaire in the navy blue suit. The day one brave deed broke every ceiling she had been assured would never break. And all she did was there for a small child who reminded her of herself. That Friday began like any other. Amara drank her customary black coffee with no sugar and took the 7:40 a.m. bus downtown. The sky was gray, the kind that hangs low and calm over the city, the type that lets you know nothing important is going to happen. But something significant was on the way. She didn't know it yet. By 11:45 a.m., the lunch crowd at Lunaire had started to trickle in. Lawyers, executives, and influencers were all hunting for the ideal plate to post. That day, Amara was in charge of the patio tables. The sun was just starting to come out from behind the clouds. Then, a last-minute reservation was added to her area. 2 people. At first, they didn't stick out. A man in a navy suit that fits him perfectly. A small girl with a pink satchel at her feet and her hair beautifully braided. No security staff, no big entrance. A subtle presence that somehow changed the air around them. Amara came up to them with her customary grace. "Good afternoon," she said in a friendly way. "Amara is my name. Today, I'll be taking care of you." The man grinned in a nice way. The girl looked up, interested yet careful. Amara saw something as she took their order. The small one wanted grilled salmon, kale salad, and mac and cheese. The man looked around the room as if he was used to being observed. The way he stood, always keeping the girl close by. Safe. Now. Relax. They talked in quiet voices. The girl chuckled once, and Amara couldn't help but smile back. She looked like someone I knew, something that brought up a memory that Amara couldn't quite put her finger on. At that moment, she didn't know that the man in front of her was Cameron Beckett, the CEO of Empire Tech, an individual who was worth more than $6 billion. A dad who had kept his daughter out of the public eye since his wife died 3 years ago. A man whose whole life had been about having power until now. But none of that mattered to Amara. She didn't feel starstruck. She wasn't trying to figure things out. She was just being herself and treating her visitors like people. She didn't know that her kindness was about to be put to the test, or that in only 15 minutes, her world and Cameron's would be turned upside down. Just one comment or act of bias might turn a normal lunch into a momentous moment. Someone else had been watching since Amara said hello to the man in the navy suit and his daughter. Ronald Hensley, the general manager of Billionaire, stood at the host stand with his arms crossed and a rigid look on his face. To someone who wasn't trained, he might have just looked concentrated, maybe even like a pro. But Amara knew better than that. She had seen that gaze too many times. It wasn't because I was curious. It was power. Ronald was the kind of guy who hid behind regulations and procedures, but he made sure that some people had to follow them more strictly than others. Ronald was a tall, thin man in his 50s with slicked-back gray hair and a fake smile. He was proud of maintaining the restaurant's standards. In his mind, those standards did not include waitresses who looked like Amara talking to guests who looked like Cameron Beckett. As soon as Amara went back to the kitchen to place the order, Ronald cornered her. "Did they ask you?" he questioned, his voice quiet yet clear. Amara blinked. "Sir, they were just put in my section." He took a sniff. "Well, don't stay too long. Some guests choose to keep their distance from professionals." She nodded and didn't say anything. This wasn't anything new. Whenever a famous table came into her area, Ronald had something to say. Not to the other servers, only her. Amara, on the other hand, stayed calm. She always did. When she brought out the drinks, a glass of lemonade for the small girl and sparkling water with lemon for Cameron, she saw Ronald looking at her from across the dining room, like a vulture, like he was waiting for her to make a mistake. She didn't. She grinned. She talked softly. After a spill, she bent down to the small girl and gave her a clean napkin. That's when Ronald came over in a hurry. He yelled, but not at Amara. He yelled at the air around them. "Amara, stop talking so much. Please keep in mind that this is a nice dining setting." Cameron looked up quickly. The tiny child stopped smiling. Amara got up slowly. "I was just—" Ronald interrupted her. "We don't pay you to make friends. Get back to work." The words hurt, not because they were mean, but everyone heard them, the other guests, the other workers. The message was very obvious. This has nothing to do with service. It was about having power, about putting her in her place. And what about Ronald? He had just messed up, because Cameron Beckett was paying attention, and he could only be patient for so long. For a second, everything stopped. There was a lot of tension in the air at the restaurant. The sound of drinks clinking and people talking softly is gone. Every guest, every server, and even the jazz band stopped playing. The sound that took its place was the quiver in Amara's voice when she finally spoke. "Sir," she responded softly, "you can't talk to me like that." Ronald blinked. He didn't think there would be any problems. People knew Amara as calm, collected, and too nice. He moved a little closer and spoke more quietly, but not less firmly. "Excuse me?" Amara stood up straighter. "You heard me. I did my work with respect and treated every guest here the same way you instructed us to. But I guess that's an issue when the guest looks like me. Some servers stood still for a while. One of them, a young hostess, shook her head slightly, quietly asking Amara to stop. But Amara didn't. She couldn't. Something inside her broke, not because she was angry, but because she was proud. Because she was so tired of pretending she didn't see what was going on every day. Ronald laughed, a quick, rude sound. Don't use race as an excuse, Amara. This is about being professional. Professionalism? She shot back. Or the fact that you can't stand seeing a black woman be nice to people you think are better than her? At that point, Cameron got up. He hadn't said anything up to this point. His daughter held onto his sleeve with big eyes. He glanced at Ronald with a cold, serene look that made the air feel cold. Is this how you run your business? He asked, in a quiet, controlled voice that had weight. By making fun of your personnel in front of your guests? Ronald's confidence started to wane. He looked from Cameron to the youngster, and then back again, understanding too late that this was not just any customer. Amara glanced to the girl and her voice got softer right away. Are you all okay, dear? The girl nodded shyly and reached out with her small hand to squeeze Amara's. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. It meant comprehension. It meant being connected. And at that moment, something big changed. Cameron's face altered. He wasn't angry anymore, but he was impressed. Honor. Then Amara did something that shocked everyone. She took off her apron, folded it up nicely, and set it on the table. She answered calmly, if standing up for her means losing this job, then I guess I'm done here. She turned around and walked away, her head held high. Ronald's lips opened, but he didn't say anything. It was very quiet after that. Everyone in that room had just seen something unusual, a person choosing self-respect over fear. And the billionaire in the navy blue suit realized right once that he wasn't done with Amara Sullivan. Not even close. It started before the door had even closed behind her. Ronald raced back into the kitchen, his face hot and his nostrils flaring. He shouted to no one in particular, she's done. Take her away from here. I don't care if it's the middle of my shift. Some of the personnel looked at each other but didn't say anything. Everyone knew how angry Ronald could get, and everyone had learned, sometimes the hard way, that sticking up for someone like Amara may cost them their job. Amara was already in the rear corridor, where she was trembling her hands a little as she took her belongings out of her locker. Her heart raced, yet she didn't feel bad about anything. Not a single word, not a sight, not the fact that she had finally set a limit. But then she heard him speak behind her. Amara. She turned around carefully. Ronald was at the end of the hall, brandishing a clipboard like a gavel. You are officially fired. From now on, I'll send you your last check in the mail. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice showed all the happiness he had been holding in for months. Amara replied softly. You can't treat people this way. He smiled. I just did. That was all there was. There is no HR meeting, no reason given, no chance to make her case. She worked at one of the best restaurants in Chicago 1 minute, and the next, she was just a girl with a backpack and a voice that had finally gotten too loud for him. She went out the back door, and the cool air of the afternoon smacked her face like a slap. Her feet went on their own across the alley and toward the parking lot. She didn't know where she was headed. Maybe home, a place to cry into a latte. She hadn't planned that far ahead. Then a black SUV came into the parking lot and stopped right in front of her. The window went down. He was the one. Beckett, Cameron, still dressed up and calm, but this time he was looking at her on purpose. I think you just did something amazing, he said. I want to talk to you. Amara blinked. She didn't know if she was dreaming or if her legs had gone numb. Cameron got out of the car. Would you like a cup of coffee? And just like that, the story went on. It started. The wind in the parking lot brought the fragrance of new rain and city traffic, but all Amara could hear at that moment was her own breath. Now, Cameron Beckett was standing in front of her, tall and confident. He was no longer just a random guest in her area. And without the restaurant lights casting shadows or the heaviness of stillness between them, he looked different, not scary. People, he repeated again, in a soft voice, just coffee. You've had a day. Amara halted, holding on to the strap of her canvas bag as if it were a lifeline. Some of her wanted to turn around and leave. But the other part, the part that had just stood up to a man who made her life terrible, was done getting smaller. "Okay," she responded in a quiet voice. "But I'm not going to change who I am just to sit across from a rich guy." Cameron smiled. "I wouldn't want you to." They headed down the street to a quiet cafe. No guards, no news. There were just two people at the window table, and they had steaming coffee cups between them. Then he told her everything. He told her that he had lost his wife to breast cancer 3 years before. About being a single father to his daughter Zoe while also being one of the few black CEOs of a Fortune 100 tech company. About how lonely it was to have authority. About how he had been watching Amara since she stooped down to give Zoe a clean napkin, and how something about her presence, her care made him think of his wife. He said, "I've been to 100 restaurants, but I've never seen somebody treat my daughter like a person instead of a trophy. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You just came and were kind." Amara blinked with shock. "Honestly, I was just doing my job." "No," he responded in a calm but forceful voice. "You were doing something that most people don't have the guts to do anymore. You got up, and it indicates you are the kind of person I want to be around." Amara looked at him, not sure if she should laugh, cry, or run away. Cameron went on, "I own a business called Empire Tech. We're getting bigger quickly. We need folks who aren't afraid to say what they think in quiet places. People like you." There was a break. Then he bent over. "Would you like to work for me?" Amara sat in shock, her hands curled around the warm ceramic of her untouched coffee. She looked at the man across from her, not as a billionaire or a computer mogul, but as a father. A man who had seen her put her job on the line for a small child who wasn't hers. And now he was giving her a job? "I don't have a degree," she answered swiftly, her voice half whispered and half shielded. "I've taken some business classes, but I never finished them. I have only ever worked in restaurants." Cameron shook his head. "Amara, I'm not giving you a desk because of your resume. Because of who you are, I'm giving it to you. You know how hard it is to find someone who will speak up even if it means losing everything?" She looked down. She gripped the mug more tightly. He said, "You stood up when it counted. That's the kind of person I need to help me clean up the mess in my own business." Amara looked up, confused. "Wait, your business? Empire Tech? I thought you were in charge." Cameron smiled a little. "I am. But there are fissures even on the top floor. Things need to change in our culture. Clear, being responsible. And it won't happen with folks who are too scared to talk." He stopped. "I want you to be a part of our internal auditing department. Don't worry, not as an accountant. We have enough of those. But only as a spectator, someone who tells the truth. I want you to stroll through our offices the same way you did at that restaurant. With your eyes open, ears alert, and heart intact." Amara blinked. This couldn't be genuine. She was folding napkins and avoiding insults 2 hours ago. Now she was being offered a job with a tech company worth billions of dollars? "I don't know what to say," she finally said. "Say yes," Cameron said. "You'll get training, you'll get help, and you will be safe. I won't let what happened at Billionaire happen again." She thought for a moment. It seemed too enormous and too quick. But something inside her, a spark she hadn't felt in years, was waking up. Cameron pulled out a business card from his jacket and passed it over the table. "Don't worry. Get some sleep. Just so you know, you already did well in the most important interview." He stood up, nodded once, and departed. Amara gazed at the card in her palm. There was a name she would never forget in silver under the Empire Tech logo. Cameron Beckett is the CEO. And what's under that? A note, written by hand. "Courage is your credential." 2 weeks later, Amara was in the marble lobby of Empire Tech, wearing the only blazer she owned, and shoes that pinched her toes just enough to keep her from falling. The structure rose 30 floors above the Chicago skyline. All glass, power, and quiet money. It all seemed scary, but Amara was not the same person who had left Billionaire's rear door. That version of her had folded napkins and put up with insults. This one? She was still terrified, but she wasn't quiet anymore. Her part wasn't normal. Cameron had told the crew that she was a culture integrity consultant, but most of them didn't know what that meant. To be honest, She didn't either. She did know this. Her job was to watch, report, and most importantly, speak the truth. Most people didn't believe her at first. She didn't work in tech. She didn't use buzzwords. She didn't have an MBA, or wear heels that made her look like she was in charge. But Amara had something more dangerous than her qualifications. She was paying attention. She paid attention to who got interrupted the most during meetings. She saw that junior personnel were hesitant in their testimonies during interviews. She began to make connections that no one else had thought of. She observed the diversity committee, which was really just a group of people who never made decisions. She knew that interns from Ivy League schools got help, while interns from other schools got busy work. She watched how HR used nice words and extended waits to hide complaints. And then she found something bigger. A third-party company devised a hiring algorithm that automatically filtered out candidates from some zip codes, mostly bad ones. There are a lot of black and brown neighborhoods. Amara looked at the numbers and felt sick to her stomach. It was not obvious. Looks like it could be legal. But on purpose. She gave it to Cameron. He read the report without saying a word. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at her like he did in the cafe. He answered, "You were never just here to watch. You were here to help burn this down." Amara nodded. "Then let's get the fire going." From that day on, she wasn't just a quiet observer. She was a voice. She wrote memos. She changed the rules for hiring. She sat in boardrooms close to CEOs who were trying not to look at her. She told the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. And the more she talked, the more other people did too. The quiet was coming to an end. But the main fight, the one in public, was still to come. There is a designer for every system, and every mask has someone who made it. For weeks, Amara had been tracing patterns, quiet ones that were hidden deep in Empire Tech's back-end systems. But what she found was more than simply a bad hiring algorithm. It was on purpose. The program that highlighted resumes from bad neighborhoods, it wasn't a bug. It had been designed that way. A private data company constructed it, and a VP who hid behind jargon like optimization and risk management gave it the green light. Lawrence Ridge was his name, Senior Vice President of Operations. Background in the Ivy League, 30 years in the business world. Suits that are smooth, lies that are smooth. He never said anything that was clearly racist. He didn't have to. The system spoke for him. Amara understood that telling on him would be hard. Not only did titles protect people like Lawrence, but so did networks. Friends who play golf, givers, college classmates who are now in high places. Taking him on meant putting all Cameron had worked for on the line. But Amara didn't want to be safe. She put together the study methodically, using statistics, legal research, and statements from individuals who had privately questioned the hiring processes but were too scared to speak up. And then she went straight to Cameron with it. She handed the packet across his desk and said, "This goes all the way up. And if we ignore it, we're just as bad as the people we replaced." Cameron didn't think twice. He set up a meeting of the board. Amara sat at the long glass table for the first time, not as a guest but as a whistleblower. She gave everything calmly, clearly, and without stopping. The group went quiet when she presented the code lines that sorted applications by zip code. When she read aloud the corporate communications that talked about reducing risk in high-crime areas, people's faces went pale. Lawrence tried to fight back. "She's getting things wrong. That information was about safety." Amara looked him in the eye. "Who is going to protect me?" "Who?" she asked. "People who are black? Neighborhoods with Latinos? Students who go to community colleges? Come on, Lawrence. Who are you really attempting to keep this corporation safe from?" No one said anything. Cameron shut the folder. "Get your stuff together, Lawrence." It was done. Not just for one guy, but for a system that has been hidden for too long. Amara didn't brag. There was no smile on her face. She just sat there, still and strong in her stillness. Because truth didn't have to yell. It just had to be there. And she did. Amara stood in front of the mirror in the Empire Tech bathroom the morning of the board meeting, fixing the sleeves of her blazer. She wasn't scared like she used to be. What she felt now was deeper. Resolve. The boardroom down the hall was buzzing with excitement. The agenda was clear. What is the subject? Culture, accountability, and changes in leadership. Everyone knew what that meant. There were a dozen board members, investors, and senior leaders around the table with Cameron at the top. A lot of them had never talked to Amara before. As she stepped in and sat down at the far end of the room, just a few people said anything to her. But they would remember her after today. Cameron started the discussion with a simple sentence. This business can't grow until it becomes better, and the truth is the first step to healing. Then he gave Amara a nod. She got up. No slides, no show business. She had a folder in her hand and truth in her words. She talked about patterns, not persons, not assumptions, but systems. She talked on how legacy decisions that weren't looked at had formed a culture that left out the individual's empire said it served. She read several quotes from polls of employees that didn't give their names, showed how the algorithm worked, used hiring statistics. But she didn't only give figures. She also showed what it was like to step into a chance and still feel invisible. Some members of the board moved around awkwardly. One said something beneath his breath, but nobody stopped her. There was a long hush when she was done. After that, Cameron got up. He remarked, "I started this business with a used laptop and my kitchen table. But at some point, our walls got too high, and we let folks like Lawrence Ridge make them taller." He gazed around the room. "I'm not here to defend people's reputations. I'm here to make things better. So if any of you think we should keep doing things the same way, this is your time to go." Nobody moved. Cameron went on to say, "Starting today, we're starting a new ethics and culture division. The person who made this day possible will be in charge of it." He looked at Amara. "Only if she wants to." Amara blinked. "You want me to be the leader?" "You already have," he said. People in the room clapped quietly, astonished, unsure, but real. The room shifted right then and there, not only because Amara kept her position, but also because the truth had become policy. She didn't merely change the rules, she changed the legacy. It didn't happen all at once. Changing a company's culture is like trying to turn a ship in the middle of a storm. It's hard, slow, and full of opposition. But it did turn. Because someone was brave enough to take the wheel. Amara took on her new job as the Director of Ethics and Culture with the same calm strength she had when she worked at Billionaire. She didn't strive to make people like her. She paid attention. She asked questions that other people were too scared to ask, and most importantly, she provided room for truth, healing, and voices that had been silent. She set up blind hiring panels, mentorship programs for groups that don't get enough help, and procedures that let employees report bias without fear. She even brought back several folks who had quit because they thought Empire Tech wasn't right for them. But the most important change wasn't put down in policy, what folks felt when they walked in. Because they saw her. And when they saw her, they saw hope. Months after that terrible day at the restaurant, Amara was sitting in her office one afternoon when she got a small packet in the mailroom. There is no address to send it back to, only her name. There was a drawing with crayons inside. A young girl is standing next to a tall woman with a bun and a big smile. The words, "Thank you for standing up for me," were written in bright pink letters. It was signed, Zoe. Amara shut her eyes and held the paper as if it were glass. She could still feel the heat of the restaurant, the embarrassment, and the sound of her own heartbeat when she refused to shrink. She smiled. This wasn't just about one female at one establishment. It was for everyone who has ever been told they were too loud, too dark, too unusual, or too much. It was about reminding everyone that dignity is priceless. And what about bravery? It doesn't ask for permission. Amara didn't want to change an empire. She just wouldn't be silent. And by doing so, she made history. If this tale made you feel something, please share it. Because someone out there needs to hear it right now. This is Hidden Worth, where we tell stories that show who we truly are when no one is looking. And this was a black narrative that changed everything.